That's quite an eventful week we've been having. Back to the moment, it's time to turn our first guest, Ajuri Ngelale, journalist and senior special assistant to President Muhammadu Buhari on public affairs, for our earlier advertised discussion around the infrastructure legacies of the administration he serves, even as the ticking of the clock intensifies ahead of the 2023 general election. We will also try to bring the general topic of the government's performance in other key areas to the fore as we go along with the interview. Good morning, Ajuri. Good to have you join us today.
Good morning to you, my dear brother. And of course, good morning to Abi. It's truly a privilege to be with you this morning.
All right. Thank you so very much. It's barely a month to the start of the campaigns for next year's election. 5 or thereabout, 5.5 months to the election itself, and just about 9 months remaining for President Muhammadu Buhari to stay in office, after which he will have done good 8 years. From your own point of view, have you started constructing the legacies of the president? I know that infrastructure will probably be high on the scale, but then in terms of his general legacy, in going to 7.5 years of Muhammadu Buhari administration, how will you begin to construct the legacy that he will be remembered for?
Thank you very much for the opportunity once again. Let me just say that, I don't consider it my job to construct a legacy for President Muhammadu Buhari. I believe that the actions of President Muhammadu Buhari have constructed an enviable legacy for himself. And I'm going to be very, very specific this morning rather than speaking in generalities. If we talk about infrastructure, because we're going to have to break this down into compartments, in the infrastructure compartment, you're talking about a cross-sectoral spread of projects that can be verified by anybody, whether a citizen or whether it's a journalist, whoever it may be, across the board. I'm going to start with road infrastructure. Currently, we have about 200,000 kilometers, as you mentioned in your intro, 200,000 kilometers of road network in this nation. About 35,000 kilometers out of the 200,000 kilometers are the responsibility of the federal government of Nigeria. Another 35,000 kilometers are the responsibility of the state governments of Nigeria. And the bulk, making up about 130,000 kilometers of the road network in this country, are the responsibility of the local governments overseeing those particular roads. So you're talking about 16% of the total road network in Nigeria that is being administered under the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing under the federal government of Nigeria. Now, out of the 35,000 kilometers of federal roads in the country, we currently have about 13,000 kilometers of road in the country be under reconstruction as we speak. Within that envelope, you have multiple mega projects that people have been talking about for 40, 50 years, that people have been promising for 40, 50 years, civilian and military, and they haven't done it until it started and is now nearing completion under President Muhammadu Buhari's administration. Specifically, I refer, of course, to the second Niger Bridge, of course, a mega project that comes with essentially 6 lanes of expressway on both sides of the bridge, and then of course you have the bridge itself, about 1.7 kilometers or so of 3 lanes on each side of the bridge. That's now going to be completed by November this year, of course, well within the life of this administration. We started it from zero, and we're going to bring it to 100%. In addition to that, of course, I don't have to tell you in that axis what we've done with the Lagos-Shagamu-Ibadan Expressway, something that's been in deplorable condition for several decades now. It was this administration, through the Presidential Infrastructure Development Fund that was established by President Muhammadu Buhari, that has now been able to fund that project to near completion. I believe by December of this year, that will be fully completed. Already, most motorists across the Southwest have seen the extensive amount of work that's going on there. The same can be said for the Oyo-Ogbomosho Road that is under reconstruction. I think our citizens in the region are seeing the work that has gone on there. And then, of course, our good friends that are used to the kind of gridlock in Apapa that we've been seeing over the last 40 years are very, very well familiar with what President Muhammadu Buhari has done with the reconstruction of the Apapa-Oworonshoki Toll Gate Road, which is going to be completed again by the end of this year. These are projects that we have been working on for several years now that we're bringing to completion. And then, of course, if you go across the country, I've just mentioned a few out of about 30 mega projects that we're involved in. If you go to the South-South, you would see the kind of work that has gone on. If you go to the Aba-Port Harcourt Expressway, which we have now expanded to 8 lanes, like the airport road you see in Abuja, we've expanded that to 8 lanes through the CCECC. We have extensive work going on the Enugu-Port Harcourt Expressway, the new 200 billion naira Boni Bodo Road, linking NLNG headquarters, our gas production headquarters on Bonny Island, to the mainland of this country for the first time. For the first time, we'll be able to facilitate the road transportation of gas products from NLNG on Bonny Island to the mainland once that's completed in 2023. We've already gone to about 50% on that particular road. So there are so many different road projects across this country that we're proud of. Of course, the Abuja-Kaduna-Kano Expressway is another one. The Kano-Katsina Road to the northwest is another one. The Kano to Maiduguri Road to the northeast is another one. So many mega road projects that we've been able to deliver within the life of this administration. But again, we have to be frank about the reality of where we are. You have 35,000 kilometers of federal road, and like I said, we're only able to reconstruct about 13,000, meaning that you have about 22,000 kilometers of federal road right now that cannot be reconstructed due to the financial constraints that we have, the real financial constraints that we have. So we're being realistic, we're being open with our people about what we're able to do and what we're not able to do. But now for the first time, when we say that we're doing work, you can actually point to the work and say, this is what these people have done, this is what these people did not do. Unlike previous governments that would basically put all the federal roads, they would basically put 500 million on this road, 200 million on this road, 100 million on this road, basically not even able to complete up to 1% of each road over the course of several years, but spreading it out and nothing gets done. The president said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to strategically identify those roads that we can intervene on to the point of completion so that it can benefit our economy and benefit our citizens who are applying those roads. And that's why we focused on the strategic road networks that we have focused on over the course of the last several years. Again, that's just road. That's not going into railways, gas pipeline networks, airports, and the like. If you go to aviation, it's not a secret now that we have essentially four new international airports that have come up under this administration. The Port Harcourt International Airport was at about 11% when this administration came on board. We completed that in October 2018 after about 2.5 years of hard work on that. So Port Harcourt International Airport is there. We have a new cargo airport that we're constructing in Port Harcourt as well. If you go to Akanu Ibiam International Airport, as I speak to you, that's at about 91%. That's going to be completed over the next few months. That was also inherited at about 10% completion. Of course, we completed Abuja around 2018, and then we just opened up the new Murtala Mohammed International Airport, Lagos, that we inherited at about 20%. We brought that to completion, of course, over the last few months. And then Aminu Kano International Airport in Kano is already open for traffic, but we're going to commission it officially over the next few months. Another airport that we inherited at about 10%. So there's a lot that has gone on. If I go into ports, we can do that. If I go into railways, we can do that. I think what we've seen with the Lagos-Ibadan Railway in the southwest speaks for itself. But there's really a lot that we can go into.
All right, Ajuri. Again, thank you so much for being with us this morning. Sounds like quite a catalogue of capital mega projects. Very impressive, we have to say. But we can't get into a discussion about Nigeria's infrastructure climate without addressing the issue of power, as existing limitations within this sector has constrained overall significant growth, as we all know. Could you speak to the future of the power sector in relation to this administration's work so far?
Thank you very much, Abby. And let me just take a moment to commend the professionalism that you and Steve exhibit every weekend. It's not something, unfortunately, that we get a lot of in today's media industry in the country. So I commend you for that. Let me say that, when we talk about the power sector in the country, One of the challenges is to understand how integrated it is to other subsectors of the national economy. What I mean by that is you can invest massively in substations across the country, transmission lines and the like. But if you don't, for example, have adequate gas transmission infrastructure in place to be able to power these power stations effectively through the effective transmission of the gas into these plants, then you're not going to be producing a lot. One of the mega challenges, and I heard the conversation you were having with Steve about this earlier in your introduction. One of the challenges we've had, which was not mentioned there, is the issue of sabotage, right? The issue of sabotage of gas lines. Most times when we talk about sabotage of pipelines, people assume that it has to do only with oil pipelines for the obvious, economic interest of some illicit oil smugglers and all of that. What is underreported in our view is the outright sabotage, the intentional sabotage of gas pipelines, because we're in a political season where some people want to create an impression that nothing is going right in the country because they believe it will suit their electoral fortunes and all of that. So we are battling with people who are targeting our gas pipelines to ensure that gas is not made available to the power plants to be able to optimize our power output in the country. That is a very real problem. What the minister was referring to a few months ago is the fact that if you look at where we were a few months ago with constant blackouts, compared to until this most recent strike action, of course, which is a man-made issue that can be quickly resolved, we had a situation where we were able to recover most of the power deficit that we had fallen into as a result of the gas pipeline sabotage. Now, when we talk about the investments that have been made, there are a few very important things that I think I should mention here. Everybody talks about the $2.8 billion Ajaokuta to Kaduna to Kano gas pipeline, which effectively is going to complete the circuit of gas transmission infrastructure in the country so that you can industrialize not just the east, not just the south, not just the west, but also the north. But it's also the trunk line. It's going to be the root foundation line of the trans-Saharan and the Nigerian trans-Saharan gas pipeline, which is going to carry, for the first time in our history, Nigerian gas out of the Niger Delta to markets in Europe through the Sahara into the Algerian pipeline network that will now connect to Western Europe. So we'll now have a direct export line to the international community of Nigerian gas, meaning billions of dollars in new revenue for the future of Nigeria's economy. Most people don't know that the AKK is actually the root of that mega export project that's going to massively diversify our revenue profile as a nation. The president has done that. That's going to be completed by March 2023. In addition to that, the president spent billions of dollars on two other mega projects. One, he dualized the Escravos to Lagos gas pipeline system, the ELPS system, first commissioned in 1989. He has now dualized it, essentially doubled the capacity of that pipeline network to be able to take gas from the Niger Delta to Western Nigeria to power Western industry from about 1.1 billion standard cubic feet per day now to about 2.2 billion standard cubic feet per day. So he's doubled gas transmission to Western Nigeria through the ELPS. In addition to that, the OB3 pipeline, that is the Obiafu, Obricom, Oben pipeline, that is now doubling the capacity of gas transmission from River State through Delta State, Obricom, to Edo State, Oben, which connects with the AKK pipeline that will now transport that gas all the way eventually to Western Europe. These are all innovations of President Muhammadu Buhari to ensure that we are able to effectively get our gas resources into our power stations to ensure that we can meet up with our gas targets. Though that is not the end of the story. We recognize that generation is just one component of the industry. Obviously, the major pullback has been from the distribution, subsector of the power industry. We know how we got to this point. I don't want to belabor how, the past and all of that, but I'll just quickly summarize how we got to this point. Effectively, you had a privatization process in 2013 that handed over many of these distribution assets to people who went and got international bank loans, international credit facilities, filled their company accounts with hundreds of millions of dollars of borrowed money from international banks, used those bank balance sheets that are fraudulent to basically bid and say, look, when we purchase this distribution company, we're going to be able to put so much money, invest so much money into this distribution asset and make it viable for Nigerians to buy this distributed electricity and all of that. We now know that after they acquired these assets, many of them, not all, I don't want to generalize, but many of them immediately paid back those loans, meaning that their bank balances were very, very small, right? Meaning that they could not actually invest in this infrastructure that they acquired. But now guess what? They hold the infrastructure. They acquired the infrastructure. So now what we've had to do over the course of the last several years is the federal government of Nigeria, through the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading Company, has had to basically bail out these distribution companies that that should have never had the assets in the first place, some of these owners, by basically giving money, we're talking billions of dollars, paying billions of dollars through NBET to the generation companies for power they're generating, but is not getting into the homes of Nigerians because distribution companies have not had the infrastructural investment to be able to distribute that electricity from the generation companies into the homes and businesses of Nigerians. What we've been able to do gradually over the course of the last 6 years is gradually bring down the billions of dollars that NBET is having to pay the generation companies by creating a new mechanism of payment, of revenue collection on behalf of the distribution companies through the Central Bank of Nigeria and the deposit money banks in the country, so that customers are now paying into, instead of some general account that distribution companies, they just basically are sharing money from, they're now able to say, look, we're going to ensure that we pay the generation companies directly from the money we're receiving from customers for the distributed electricity that they are actually receiving. So we've come a long way, but we're not where we want to be. The truth is that if that privatization process was not so fraudulent, we would have come a long way, a lot faster. But this is where we are, and we're continuing to make the investments that we need to make to correct some of the corrupt practices of the past in the sector.
All right, Ajuri, I mean, thanks for being very elaborate and specific. But then infrastructure sounds like a euphemism for brick and mortar. And you know what the standard bearer of APC once said in Lagos, that performance is not measured alone by brick and mortar. So my point to you is, how much of this can your party run? How well can you campaign? Can the party campaign? Can the standard bearer of the party use the infrastructural landmarks of the Buhari administration to campaign at a time that people are basically struggling to stay alive and struggling to live well? You know what insecurity has done, especially with the rail infrastructure and even some of the road infrastructure. But we're borrowing to get most of these things done. Yet, one, they're not safe, and two, those that we are building them for are not even safe using those infrastructural landmarks. How well do you think that your party, the APC, will be able to sell the candidacy of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu and Chetima, with brick and mortar achievements?
Thank you very much, Steve. I think it would be a bit of a disservice to contextualize the achievements of this government in the term brick and mortar. It goes much more. It goes much deeper than that. Let me say that the way that I like to tackle issues is from a nationalistic perspective. I try to stay away from the APC, PDP, ABGA, Labour Party, political partisanship and all of that. I know it's the popular thing for government officials to do. It's not really my thing. I like to focus on what is good for the nation and what is not good for the nation. With that said, I would say that if you look at the option that it will confront Nigerians in this next election, I think it's very obvious that you're looking at two major parties with two major candidates that effectively are going to lay out their records and their programs for the country to decipher between. And I believe one candidate has a record of what they have done and what they can point to in a place like Lagos State, which obviously we know the economy of Lagos State is greater than most African nations. We know what Lagos State used to be in terms of security with crime infestation, what it used to be in terms of poor revenue generation, what it used to be in terms of decrepit infrastructure, and we know what it is today, 20 years following the administration of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu in the state. So that's that. I think now if you look at the other side, the question is going to be, if you're the former vice president, when you're making promises to revolutionize Nigeria and turn Nigeria into the place where he lives 90% of his time, which is Dubai, if you're making those promises, Nigerians are rightly going to ask, what have you done to show that you can deliver on what you're promising? And I think what they're going to look back on in the Obasanjo administration is the privatization exercises which he oversaw, which saw the sale of, for example, the $1.2 billion Delta Steel Company for $30 million. We've seen what that turned into. We've seen other failed privatization exercises during that time. So there are a lot of things that Nigerians will assess. But let me stick to the question you asked, which is about the notion of whether brick and mortar will be enough. For Nigerians, to say brick and mortar is to essentially, boil down the experience that they've had on railway lines across the country, which they had not benefited from before this administration came into office, of new international airports that they can feel proud to fly into and out of when they're taking their leave from the country or on business or what have you, or whether it is the road networks which they have seen crop up around them. They've gone through the inconvenience of having traffic where you have reconstruction and all of that, but now they're seeing the benefits. I was mentioning earlier that the Lagos-Shagamu-Ibadan Expressway in your region, you know what it was like. You'd be waiting 6 hours on that road, deplorable conditions and all of that. People are now enjoying the work of this administration on that road, and that is the story across the country. Now, with that said, when you have that done within 7 years, where we have had a fraction of the revenues that previous administrations had, we've been able to couple that with our food sufficiency program. We were, of course, when this administration came into office, we were the largest importer of rice in Africa. Today, we are the largest producer of rice in Africa, mostly self-sufficient, saving billions of dollars annually on rice imports as a result of the anchor borrowers program of this administration, in addition to many other interventions under this administration. Then you look at the fact that, again, that's not brick and mortar. That's the stomachs of Nigerians. Then you look at the fact that we put in place the social investment programs, currently servicing over 15 million Nigerians that did not exist before this administration. The physical infrastructure accompanies the social investment programs, the agricultural programs, all to put together a portfolio of legacies that other administrations with double the time and double the money could not put in place. So the choice between Nigerians in this election ultimately is going to come down to the fact that you're having two different candidates making promises to Nigerians about what they will do. One candidate will be able to point to what they were able to do in bringing safety and development to Lagos State. The other one will have to answer for some of the activities that he oversaw as a former vice president, as chairman of the Privatization Council, and many of the other things that were happening at that particular time. I think the international record on that candidate, for some, may be clear. For others, maybe not so clear. But these are issues that will bear themselves out over the course of the campaign. What I will say is that everything I have elucidated this morning in terms of road, rail, airport, and I've not even talked about seaport. I've not talked about the new Lekki seaport that is going to be coming on stream by the end of this year. That is December 2022. The phase one of the Port Harcourt refinery, we're finally going to be refining our own petroleum products under the NNPC's investment in the Port Harcourt refinery of $1.5 billion. Phase one of that project is going to be done by March 2023, before the end of this administration, with the rest of it being completed by December of 2023. So there is a lot that we can campaign on, that people can go and verify, rather than the kind of audio propaganda that we're used to hearing from some opposition politicians.
But Ajuri, sorry, Abi, just one. I mean, you sound like this will be a two-horse race kind of campaign, are you totally eliminating the Peter Obi movement, from what will happen in 2023? Because a lot of people will disagree with you, and they might point at what happened in Kenya, that there might be surprises, in February next year. Have you written Peter Obi off totally?
My dear brother, let me first of all acknowledge your point by saying that if you look at what happened in Kenya, it was actually a 2-horse race. It was not a 3-horse race. The Kenyan Vice President Ruto was up against the Prime Minister Raila Odinga. It was really a 2-man race, which is what many Nigerians, not all, are projecting for the 2023 general election in Nigeria. Now, to your point, this is not in any way an offensive against Governor Peter Obi. He does have many very loyal and very ardent followers. But what I would say is that there are those in the political space that will tell you in the circles of politics in the country that Peter Obi is working underhanded for Alhaji Atiku Abubakar and is basically positioning himself for a high-level appointment in that government by, at the last minute, dovetailing his support into support for Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. Not a surprise as a former running mate to the same candidate. So I don't disrespect him at all. I don't in any way undermine the activism and loyalty of his supporters. They should continue to support him. But we have an understanding as to what he's really aiming for, and I don't believe he really believes that he's going to be the president of Nigeria come 2023.
All right, Ajuri, I'm going to digress a little bit and move us back to a point you mentioned earlier, because you spoke about diversifying revenue profile. Now, while we have a growing number of projects being embarked on under this administration, some already executed, let's talk a little bit about the country's debt profile in relation to infrastructure and sustainability concerns generally. Now, Nigeria has always been known to experience the double challenge of a low revenue base and a wide infrastructure gap. How close would you say we realistically are to closing this gap?
Fantastic question, and I know it's one that's on the minds and hearts of Nigerians, the issue of debt. Let's first of all understand the context, and I'll go into exactly where we are. When we came into office, President Muhammadu Buhari came into office in 2015. We had a debt profile of national total debt, that's domestic and foreign, of about $64 billion US. $64 billion US is what he inherited. Obviously, that $64 billion came with no infrastructural investment, no social investment programs, and basically total reliance on imported pens, pencils, food, you name it. We're importing everything we could possibly import. Now, we've gone from that kind of situation now to having to borrow, because, like you mentioned, we do have a revenue crisis, a serious revenue problem, to now having to borrow for most of our capital expenditures that we've made in these kinds of road, rail, and port investments and aviation investments that we've talked about. But the difference is that Nigerians are actually seeing the fruit of those investments. Instead of taking debt to steal or taking debt to pay salaries, we've been taking debt to fund capital projects that will now bring a revenue that will allow us to pay down that debt. And that is the distinct difference between President Muhammadu Buhari's debt accrual and previous administration, the debt accrual of previous administrations. Now, where we are today is, I believe at last check, and anybody can Google this, but I believe we're around $90 billion, if I'm not mistaken, meaning that we've added about 30 or so billion dollars of debt over the course of the last 7.5 years. Obviously, that's with 2 economic recessions and a once-in-a-century global pandemic factored into the equation, and all the investments that I've mentioned factored into the equation. I believe in 2010, our national debt was $35 billion, and the Goodluck Jonathan administration added about the same amount of debt, about $30 million, to take it to about 64 by the time they left. We've now taken it to give or take around 88 or 90 billion, if I'm not mistaken. So that's where we currently are, but Nigerians can see the difference. Now, with that said, I think you've raised a critical issue, which is how do we deal with the revenue crisis that we have? This is going to be of interest to most Nigerians, because most Nigerians don't know this, and we have to do a better job of reporting these issues, because they can be verified by any journalist that wants to verify it, or any citizen that wants to verify it. As of 2015, my dear sister, in this country, just imagine this, from 1960 to 2015, that is 55 years of national development. Within that period of 55 years, we were only able to accrue 13, that is 13 13 million taxpayers across the Nigerian Federation in 55 years. That is the best we could do. 13 million taxpayers as of 2015. As I speak to you today, we have moved from 13 million taxpayers in 2015 to over 35 million taxpayers in Nigeria today. That is a tripling in the last 7 years because of the innovations brought by President Muhammadu Buhari's administration in terms of the automation and ease of tax payment and processing processes that have been put in place under this administration. We talk about brick and mortar, road, rail, airport, seaport, and many of these hard infrastructural interventions under this administration. Of course, I don't think if you add all the previous civilian and military administrations together, probably you get 30% of what President Muhammadu Buhari has done in that regard. But we go beyond that. We go into soft infrastructure. What are those soft infrastructure we're talking about? We're talking about regulatory reforms. Nigerians should ask the question, why was it that the World Bank named Nigeria top 10 most improving nation in the entire world in the ease of doing business 2 out of the last 4 years? The reason why they did that is because they came into the country and contacted did their audits of all of the regulatory reforms. For example, at the CAC, we know anybody applying for business name registration before this administration, you'd be spending up to 3 months in that process, probably having to pay a bribe to somebody to expedite it, and all sorts of manual paperwork. We have automated that. Now you're able to get your business name within 48 hours through an automated process. In addition to that, our tax collection system, you can go online and pay your taxes. You're not having to stand in some tax queue in one sweaty office where the AC is not working. You sit in the comfort of your home on your app, on your smartphone, on your laptop, or on your iPad, and you pay your taxes. We have been able to put in place judicial reviews in Kano and Lagos High Courts, for example, to now introduce things like small claims courts, where you can now mediate quickly and get settlements instead of going in through a months-long judicial fight that is time costly and financially costly to those involved. These are the things that the World Bank came in and identified and said, you know what, Nigeria is actually serious about attracting investment and doing business. Now, does that mean that we don't have room to grow? Absolutely not. We have a long way to go. Whenever you start from a major deficit, whether it's hard infrastructure, social investment, or soft reform, soft infrastructure, you have a deficit. So you have to work your way out of the deficit before you even get to ground zero and start building on top. What we have done is we have verifiably started digging out of the pit that these people put us in, and they want to put us back into. And now we're going to try and build on top of the ground that we have now been able to build up to. So this is where we are. All is not yet well. We're not trying to deceive people into thinking all is well. But what we're saying is that we have made verifiable, targeted interventions across sectors, soft, hard, social investment, agriculture, you name it, and we're moving in the right direction. And we're going to continue to work very hard to ensure that Nigerians are able to get us to the end of the agenda, of the change agenda that President Muhammadu Buhari promised our people.
All right, Ajuri, before we let you go, because we are actually running out of time, just a quick one from me. I know that there will be pass marks here and there from what you have said, especially in the areas of, infrastructural development, both the hard one and the soft ones. But then no administration does it all. Where do you think that President Muhammadu Buhari could have done better? In all the more than 7 years that he has spent? Will it be in the administration of, the oil industry, for example, the subsidy regime, which, as we understand, by June next year, when we will have left office, the subsidy might be removed? Or will it be in the manner in which he has handled insecurity? It is only now that his body language seems to support the fact that you can actually wipe out, go all out against the terrorists. Which key area do you think that the president could have done better? Very briefly.
Thank you for this question, Steve. Well, let me say on the insecurity question, it's not only now that President Muhammadu Buhari has gone all out. If you recall, and I think this has been totally muted in the media in this country, is the fact that in 2021, that is last year, we knocked off the top 2 threats to this country in terms of the fight against insecurity. We took off the battlefield Abu Musab al-Banawi of ISWAP, and we also took off the battlefield Abubakar Shekau, who was mocking previous presidents openly, that you can't do anything to me, right? Both of them are no longer on the battlefield because of the interventions of President Muhammadu Buhari's administration, of course, as with the president as commander-in-chief. Now, do we have a lot of work still to do? Absolutely, particularly with regard to the bandits. The president has been clear that we cannot simply, when you have several innocent hostages in a forest, we cannot simply afford to go in and mow everybody down and be killing innocent Nigerians that were kidnapped. You have to work very tactically, and you have to work sensitive to the realities of the situation you're confronted with. Not speaking to the fact that we're also working with Western partners that we are getting these advanced defense systems from, that are also watching how we're handling the issue of human rights and casualties. So if you end up over the medium and long term diminishing your ability to fight against the threats against your country, if you are, seen as killing innocent Nigerians who might be in harm's way while dealing with these threats. So it requires a very tactical approach, which is what we have put in place. Now, with all of that said, if you ask me where I think we could improve, I think there's no doubt about the fact that in any government, you're going to have good eggs and bad eggs. You're going to have excellent people and you're going to have very mediocre people. There's no question about that. Within the APC administration, I think even the president would tell you that he has been disappointed in some of his senior officials from 2023 to 2015 to 2023. That's why there were some high-level cabinet officials that were removed and replaced and all of that. I believe the power sector is one sector where we lost a lot of ground and a lot of time. And I believe that the Siemens program probably would have been much further along if we had had officials in place that were effective and efficient enough to drive it further than where we were able to take it to. That's probably one of the great regrets of this administration. I believe the president has been fairly open about that. Another area I believe would probably be, I think the president would have loved to have seen a situation where the country is a little bit more unified than it is now. I think part of this has to do with the politicking, the fact that you have political actors who are running on a disunity campaign and fund people to go out across TV and radio to tell Nigerians on radio and TV that Buhari hates certain parts of the country, or hates certain ethnic groups, or hates certain religions, and all that propaganda. I think that is not helped. But I believe that probably we could have been a little bit more proactive in responding to that sponsored effort to paint President Muhammadu Buhari as some sort of ethnic jingoist. That's something that I think we could have certainly improved upon, and something that the president would have liked to see more of. And I'm sure that the presidential candidate of the APC is probably going to be driving very hard on the issue of national unity and on consolidating on the achievements of President Muhammadu Buhari, considering the fact that if you look at the cabinets that were constructed in Lagos State, you would have seen Igbos, you would have seen Fulani, you would have seen Yoruba, you would have seen people from all parts of the country contributing. And I believe that that's kind of the future that we want to. That's the future that we want.
All right, Ajuri, so much to unpack, such little time. But I want to thank you so much again for joining us. If you're just joining us, we've been talking to Senior Special Assistant on Public Affairs to President Muhammadu Buhari, Ajuri Ngelale. Thank you. Have a good day ahead.